Hello, everybody. This is Darren coming to you live here on Monday night, Mondays with Mark. We are looking this day at Mark 21, Mark 1, 21 through 28. Probably going to get caught up in the first couple verses for a little while, but yeah, here we go. I'm just going to jump right in with the with reading the text from Mark 21, Mark 1, 21 through 28. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, not as the scribes. Just then there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed, and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the region, the surrounding region of Galilee. All right. So, yeah, we've just Jesus has just called the disciples in the last segment we read, announced the coming of the kingdom in in 14 and 15, and now here in 21 through 28 we have this scene in Capernaum, and I really like what the way that this segment starts off. Ched Myers in Binding the Strong Man calls this from about 121 through 3. I can't remember how far he goes in chapter 3, but he calls it the first direct action campaign, Jesus' assault on the social order in Capernaum. So the first direct action campaign, Jesus' assault on the sacred order in Capernaum. And I guess I'm going to be honest with you. I got caught up really in the first in these first couple of verses, where it talks about when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, not as the scribes. So, I mean, I come from a teaching background. That's what I did for a little while, and I know a lot of teachers. And I just was struck by how many times here in these first couple of verses that word about Jesus being a teacher and Jesus teaching comes up in those three times in 21 and 22, and then this segment is kind of tied together in verse 27, where it comes back and says they were all amazed and they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority?" So this idea of a teacher who comes and one with one who has authority is what interested me a lot this time. And I guess I've been thinking a little bit about this, how we think of what teaching means, what education means. Um, I was uh, I was listening to something today talking about student debt, the problem nowadays with student debt and how bad it's gotten. That you know, education, because of the debt that you're in when you come out of some kind of college or university. I mean, you almost have to view that experience as exclusively about the vocation or job you're going to get at the end of it. Because if you don't get a good job, then you end up owing so much money that you literally struggle to have a place to live, struggle to do those things that previous generations thought were so important at a young age, like like own a home or those or make those kind make begin to make investments with your money, that sort of thing. I see that my camera has gone down. I'll see what I can do about that. Oh, sorry about that. Little camera issue, and it was kind of lagging a bit too, but that's I guess that's life. Right. So anyway, as I was saying, I just been thinking about this before that, and thinking about it again today, um, just because of the way that this situation has kind of really impacted the lives of folks and what it means for education. And I think, I mean, even I think at the middle school, high school level, and on through, so much of what we consider, um, what we think about as today, is so geared toward um, the way that you will make money when you get out of school. And you know, uh, if you take that and put that, and to us in some ways that almost sounds like just perfectly normal, like it's okay that that's the case. But if you think about it in terms of if you think about it in terms of what Jesus is doing, Jesus coming to teach in Capernaum, going into the synagogue and teaching people what his goal is, what he hopes they will hear, what he hopes they will learn um, in that experience, just seems so divorced from what we think of as, you know, as education, as something that should be taught to people. Um, because in the end, Jesus is kind of talking about this whole nother way of living in the world. And in fact, I mean, he calls these disciples in the previous section, right? He calls these disciples to leave their occupation, to put down their nets, to leave their work and their livelihood, to come and follow him. And then in chapter 6, he will give them authority to go out and teach as well. It's it's I don't know, it's interesting. I'm thinking about thinking about the world that our education system is trying to create or to reinforce in general, and the world and that the future that Jesus is trying to create with his teaching, right? What is the difference between those two? Um, you know, I mean, this is part of reality and living in any kind of place that has a public education system. But you know, so much of what we do in our schools is either geared toward what you will make as far as money when you get out, but also in reproducing the kind of people that we think our state and system need to remain, to keep the status quo somewhat normal and somewhat on level, so that we, as a united nation or whatever however you want to categorize that. Um, and I guess exactly with what Myers is talking about here with this Jesus's direct act campaign and the assault on the social order of Capernaum. I mean, this is pretty much, directly opposed to what Jesus is trying to do in this moment of teaching. Is Jesus is coming to destabilize and in some ways deconstruct the social order the way it is. In some ways, to say, look, these scribes that Jesus has an issue with here in this text and on throughout Mark. The scribes come up again and again and around this issue of authority, and the scribes were basically the people of that time who were kind of thought to be the authorities as far as how to teach, how what you needed to learn, and how you needed to act. That you could go to the scribes and they would help you get the facts and the legal precedent or whatever that you needed to live your life. And so that was their role in most of the rural societies where there wouldn't have been, the chief priests and the more the higher order of leaders. So Jesus will come in confrontation with these folks over and over again, and really be upfront in dismantling and taking apart the social order the way it is. And I think this is something that just kept coming back and back to me as I was reading this, just thinking about this teaching role of Jesus and what it means for us. And so I just wanted to kind of dwell on that for a minute. I think it's important to think of it this way, perhaps, is as we continue to work through Mark, as we continue to return to the word for to teach, the verb for to teach occurs like 17 times in Mark, and then preaching occurs like 14 times. And most people agree that that probably teaching is a subset of the preaching. The healings and along with exorcisms and all these things are really a subset, a dynamic understanding of what it means to preach the kingdom. So all these things kind of go together, and these words will occur over and over again. And I think we need to think about, as you hear them and think about Jesus' teaching, is what is the world that Jesus is trying to create with this teaching? What's the vision for what the social situation looks like if people listen to Jesus, if people listen to Jesus's words, and if people reenact what Jesus does in the world, which is what he tries to get the disciples to do. What does that look like, and how is that similar or different from what we as the way the world should look or the way the world should work? How are those, and how do we start to listen to the teaching, we start to be teachers of Jesus' teaching in the world? I think that's where I kind of, I guess, that's where I got stuck, is thinking about this teaching role. And then, that led me to think about the other thing that happened. The other thing that comes up again and again twice in this text around teaching, is the idea of authority. What it means to have authority, and what it means that Jesus taught with authority, and that the people were, amazed by this, or that they were, that they're amazed that he taught with authority. I don't have as many clear and fleshed out thoughts about this idea of authority, but I was thinking I'm just thinking about, again, looking at our world, looking at what we think of as authority and how it works and how it functions in the world, and what it means for someone to show up with an authority that doesn't come from the structure as are the established order. What does it look like when people show up with authority, um, but not that given by the social structure as it is? I think that to me, we saw that pretty clearly in this summer with the protests and the uprising around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all and everyone else. We saw this. We saw this kind of. We saw folks. I mean, some of us saw it live. Some of us saw it on Instagram, or some other medium like that. But you saw folks show up with an authority, um, based on their compassion, for those who have been oppressed, those who have been killed, those who have been subjected to violence. You saw them show up with this authority based on their kind of strong sense of justice and what's right, commitment to truth in the way that we look at the world. Yeah, I think it's clear when people show up with an authority to teach, and that includes the aspects of teaching that we see in Jesus: to teach, to heal, to call out the spirits of this age. I did a training a couple years back on faith-rooted organizing, and I should really credit the person who led that. Harper was her last name, but one of the things they talk about in that training is looking at community and looking at your kind of the area where you live, and figuring out what are the core lies that are being told about the way the world works. What are the core kind of like spiritual lies that are being told, and then the idea is to figure those out, and then figure out what the spiritual truth is, and then I can't remember what the third part was, but there was something, and one of the, and I think that I think Myers argues this too, is that there's a sense in this text where Jesus comes and speaks with authority. We don't know exactly what the content of his teaching was. That's not given to us by Mark. We don't know exactly what the content of it was. We see some of that later on, and of course in Matthew and other Gospels, we get a sense of what Jesus was teaching. But what happens whenever Jesus starts teaching, and the people recognize that he has this different authority, this different authorization, let's say, immediately this spirit, this evil or possessed, however you want to say it, spirit shows up and says, "Have you come to destroy us? Have you come to destroy us?" And what Myers argues is that the way that Mark has set this up, he's saying that this spirit, that this let me just use the words that they say, a man with an unclean spirit. So just then, or immediately, as Jesus has teaching with authority and the people recognize it, just then this unclean spirit shows up. And what Myers argues in Binding the Strong Man is that um, you know the way that the way that Mark ties this together with the teaching, and then in 27 again the teaching and authority, and then puts this exorcism in the middle of it. He's really connecting the scribes and their social order with the cry of this unclean spirit, as if the scribes, as if the spirit of authority that the scribes have, their understanding of the way the world works, what they think is their authority to teach what they teach and to tell people to live, as if Jesus and his authority, his teaching, is threatening to destroy their understanding of the way the world works, in order to build something new, in order to bring something new in place. And so there's a way that right here at the very beginning, what's emphasized is that Jesus comes to destroy the social order the way it is. And part of the reason why he does that is because the social order is not working. It's not working for the people. So it needs to be turned around and turned upside down for the sake of Mark's community and the people listening to Jesus. I wanted to read what, speaking of it not being a good situation. I think this way that the way that Dr. Blunt, Brian Blunt, puts it in his book "Go Preach" is good. He says, he's talking about Jesus preaching his kingdom intervention, the way that Jesus comes to preach and to heal and to call forth disciples, and all of this. That the fact that this intervention has come is good news. But he says, however, for the community for which Mark wrote, the times were anything but good, threatened by the false messianisms of nationalism, the colonial domination of Rome, the economic subjugation of subsistence living, and the institutional controls of a holiness cultic ideology. The proclamation of the good news to the people of the land suggests some form of outside intervention. This intervention occurs in the text through preaching, he says. And what he talks about is that what is unique about Jesus preaching is the fact that it has this power, this exousia, the Greek word, this authority to actually bring about transformation. The claim is that Jesus teaches with authority, and immediately when an unclean spirit shows up, the spirit can be cast out because the teaching and the preaching and the presence of the kingdom takes effect in that moment. So I want to get, I think maybe I was stalling a little bit because I wasn't ready to talk about exorcism just yet. But I think it is important to make sure that we understand that to emphasize Jesus' teaching is not to emphasize only that Jesus talked a lot and didn't do anything, because we see clearly that Jesus' teaching is always attached with actions of healing, actions of making the world whole, and that's quite important, obviously. So that's kind of what I wanted to stick with today. I think there's a lot of other things that I was thinking I might get around to bringing in. There's a few texts that I thought I could get to, but I didn't quite get around to it today. So, but yeah, I think that for us, thinking about teaching, thinking about our role as teachers, and sharing um, sharing the the ways of Jesus, living the ways of Jesus, is is a really important corrective, not only to what we hear and see in the world, but also to the way that education is taught and thought about in our world. It's important to be moving in a place of liberation and wholeness for people, uh, in everything that we do. And yeah, yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to say. Um, yeah, I didn't get my my streaming stuff set up just right. I don't know if anybody's out there, and whether I can see you. If you are, I don't know. So, um, yeah, it looks like my YouTube chat is a little down, but oh no, maybe it's all right. I got it. I did something came through from Marcy. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. So, hello, right back from Marcy. But yeah. So I hope that was helpful. And say I keep thinking that I keep having less and less time to prepare this every week, and have to get working earlier. I think on these things. But I do know that I think this text is the text for the gospel this week. So maybe that gave some people who might have to worry about that something else to think about. I think the Brian Blunt's chapter on the teaching intervention in Go Preach is good. Yeah, and Ched Meyer's Binding the Strong Man section on this direct action campaign is pretty good too. He gets a little more into the exorcism part, and I want to save that a little bit so I can get my thoughts together. So, yeah. All right. Well, looks like my screen was all fuzzy to all junky to going back and forth. But thanks for hanging out, everybody. I will see you next week. We might have a short one next week. If I might be traveling, but anyway, that's all right. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time.